best speakers start with a story, and I'd like to be one of those, so I'm going to start with a story. There was a village that didn't have a well or any source of water except for a river running by not too far away. And so every day, one of the people in the village, could be a man, could be a woman, imagine either as you like, was tasked with going down to the river to fill up 2 buckets with water, bring the water back to the village, and then go get more water until everyone in the village had sufficient water. And every day when this person went down to the river, he or she filled both the buckets, walked the path to the village, but by the time they got to the village, the bucket on the left was still full, but the bucket on the right was only half full. And after thousands of trips like this, the bucket on the right started to get truly depressed. And really finally decided, fortunately, to speak out about their depressed condition, always a very good thing to do. So on a particular morning when this person walked down to the river, the bucket on the right said, "Look, I got to talk to you about this. I'm so depressed. Every day when you carry both of us full back to the village, my brother on the left gets there and is still full, but when I get there, I'm only half full. And I'm contemplating suicide, I have to tell you. It's terrible. Bucket side. And so the person tasked with carrying the water says, I hear you. Just do me a favor, make one more trip with me, and I'm going to ask you some questions along the way." So the bucket on the right says, "Oh, okay." So the next morning, they go down to the river. Person fills up both the buckets, and on the trip back to the village, the person says to the bucket on the right, "Look on the left side of the road, what do you see?" Bucket on the right says, "I don't see anything, just side of the road." Person says, "That's correct. Now look on the right side of the road, what do you see?" Bucket says, "Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of flowers." And the person says, "That's your doing. You simply haven't quite understood your purpose in life." And of course, I tell you this story because for 2 reasons. One is you can use it to start any speech you ever make in your life. Because no matter who you're talking to, they invited you having something to do with their purpose. Many times they're a little bit sometimes wondering, are they achieving their purpose? Are they on the right path, etc.? And the second reason is because of all of the gatherings that I've ever been to. Labor is one of those who is most thoughtful about its purpose. Really, I think, understands what it's about. And it's Local 21 clearly understands. I mean, Nation magazine no doubt got it right, but there's always more understanding, I think, about our purpose in which we can engage. So I was asked to come here and talk about healthcare. And healthcare is kind of more than just when you go to the doctor. These days, of course, it has a lot to do with prevention, has a lot to do with mental health, has a lot to do with sort of the kind of life that one can live that actually extends their life at the end. And I know that you know that as union members, we didn't always have health care as a benefit. We started out in the early days really talking mostly about wages, somewhat about conditions, but mostly about wages. Then we started talking about pensions because we had a notion that after we leave our work, having done the work that we did, many times not as well paid as in the private sector, we needed a pension. There wasn't a lot of thought, though, about health care because there wasn't really the issue of health insurance for a very long time. But once it became clear that they could make a lot of money out of insuring us in terms of going to the doctor or going to hospitals, you can bet that the healthcare insurance industry just burgeoned. And not very long ago, the law stood that healthcare insurance companies could not be for profit. And then it changed. And I know that you've heard about the Wellness Foundation, the endowment. These are transition or conversion foundations. And the reason they're called that is because when the health insurance companies were allowed to go for profit, they were required to contribute the current sort of diminished value of the whole firm. So the endowment started out with a $3 billion endowment when the Blues converted to be for profit. Same thing with Aetna, same thing with so many for-profit companies. So healthcare for us, once we fought for it, once we achieved it, it's still at risk, and it's at risk really because of the insurance company's ability to raise premiums, to limit coverage, to make the changes that we've all seen being made. And I know that employers worry about this, even if they want to do the right thing. And certainly municipal and county and public employers worry about it as well, though it is part of our bargaining, and we've bargained fairly well about health care. But now we see pay cuts in our public sector. Now we see threats to our retirement, and in some cases, some diminishing in terms of new members in our retirement. It's at risk. Not only that, but we've seen attempts, some of them successful, to shift the risks and the costs onto employees, onto our unions. So what has happened? Well, some of it is envy on the part of private workers. Now, I don't say this in a real negative way, but they themselves, not being part of organized labor, have had no power, no ability to really protect themselves. And so they have been cut. Their wages have been cut. Their pensions have been cut, or no pensions at all. Their health care has vanished, if they ever had it. And what happens? Instead of saying, look how wonderful it is what public unions have or public employees have, they've said, I don't have it, so I don't want you to have it. And that really has become red meat for the right wing. They try to demonize us so that it'll be easier to hurt us. Any of you, and I see there are plenty in this room that belong to any kind of minority in this country, and I'm now including white men. No joke, I'm being inclusive, okay? I mean, hey, that's who I am. So you know that the first step to being able to do something bad to some group of people is to demonize them. I don't care if it's, quote, welfare mothers 35 years ago, where they started talking about how, lazy everybody was. Now it's about public workers. Do you not hear the same thing? And you know how untrue it is. So it has been difficult to protect us because not only is the private sector saying, if I don't have it, why should they have it? But also, we are being demonized consistently. And I include myself because I have been a public, I guess they call them public servant or whatever, servant worker, servant leader, I don't know what the language is today. They don't blame the insurance companies for charging too much. They blame us for having health care. They don't blame the fact that we didn't work for a whole lot of money and now we need this pension, which isn't all that much anyway. No, they blame us because 3 of us got a great big pension and 3 million of us didn't. But let's not talk about, the 3 million. So what's the answer? Well, you already know the answer because you are a labor union. The answer is you need to join with others to push for what we want, especially in healthcare. You heard that I carried a bill twice, got it to the governor's desk, to establish what people are calling single payer, which is really kind of operates like Medicare for everybody in California. How many Medicare qualified people here? That is over 65. Anybody? Okay, I'm Medicare qualified, and I can tell you I was so relieved on my 65th birthday that I never again had to worry about health care. Really. And you can go to whatever doctor you want. You go to whatever hospital you want. I mean, it is truly universal, and not just universal for those of us in the age group, but universal in terms of what you can achieve. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover dental, which as you get older is kind of a serious consideration, or your eyes, but it is a good thing. So I wanted there to be the ability for everybody in California to be covered by affordable health insurance. And organized labor has always demonstrated that concerted action is what is needed and what it takes, and frankly, what works in order to secure rights and benefits. This healthcare struggle, this is the same struggle. And we can't let it slip away. And I know you don't want to, but it is true that after a while we started to take our healthcare coverage for granted. It's something we got through the union. Of course, we did it through collective bargaining, but you know, it's there. You don't think about it not being there. And yet, you have to. I want you to consider that we will still have to struggle in this area, because standing still on this is like going backward. We need to continuously, keep our eyes on the prize. And that means we have to work together to get the profit out of the healthcare system, because that's what's killing it. The Affordable Care Act, which even the president is now proud to call Obamacare. I saw a great bumper sticker right before the election that said Obama cares. And I thought, yeah, take it and use it, The Affordable Care Act, it's a very good start. I really support what the president went through to get it. I really support what California Congress members went through to try to achieve it. They even had a public option in it when it left the House, but the Senate killed that part of it. But it's done some very good things. It means that insurance companies can't turn people down because of pre-existing conditions. That was a big, big thing, and good for them. It means that children can stay on their parents' insurance for longer. And if any of you have boomerang kids at home, my nephew's a boomerang kid, and he's really happy about it. Of course, he's just aged out even of that coverage. It identified what it means to have basic coverage so that you can't have these little cheap knockoff kinds of policies anymore, although there's still going to be a few problems, and you look. And also it required state exchanges, so there would be some participation by a lot of insurance companies with the idea that there would be affordable health care. But we have no public option. And the reason I like a public option, several reasons. San Francisco has done a very interesting public option, not available to you, but a very, very good one. If I get to be a supervisor in LA, that's just a little plug because my race is going to be coming up. I hope that we can do something. We can't do similar because we've got 88 cities, not just one, in our county, and so we can't put business taxes on everybody, but there already is a kind of public option. That is a very important step, I think, and one of the things that we may, in a concerted way, want to think about supporting. Doesn't necessarily create universality in healthcare, but I think it could make things more affordable. And that is a very important thing for our employers, because cities and counties and water districts and school districts, it's no mistake that virtually every school district in the state was in favor of the single-payer bill. LA Unified, which you know is, well, I think the technical term is humongous. LA Unified was very enthusiastically in support because they would save millions, and not just in the single-digit millions, but in the double-digit and triple-digit millions of dollars if there were a single-payer system. But if we are to move to any kind of universal coverage in California, labor's going to have to lead the way. They're going to have to lead the way. We're going to have to lead the way because, first of all, there's a lot of us. Second of all, we can organize. Look what we've done, not just on Prop 32, but in 2 elections before that. Sometimes having to fight against, sometimes having to fight for, but we've been very, very effective. Concerted action. And you're even starting to read it in the paper. Labor is under attack everywhere, but it's strong in California. It's growing in California. It is, as you've identified today, on the rise. It is on the rise, and I think it will continue to be. We've rejected anti-union forces, and we can help the state while we're helping ourselves and helping others. Because the state also pays a humongous amount of money for its employees' for health care. So the state is also getting stronger. I liked the state of the state, what I could understand from the stories that the governor gave the other day. I did understand the little train that could, okay, that was more in my area. But the state is still getting healthy. And I think our concerted action around health care, if we decide to undertake it, can help the state as well. Still, I'll tell you what else is on the rise in California, and maybe even other places, and that is, finally, optimism. We are feeling more optimistic. Not perfect, but a little bit more. We've rejected the right wing in California. We have strongly, strongly rejected their... We've got Obama for a second term, and that was, I think, a very, very good thing for all of us. And his focus in his inaugural address on so many things that I'm old, so I cry very easily, but even when Beyonce was singing, I was crying. You know what I mean? And it was beautiful, though. She did a beautiful job, I thought. But the focus on equality is one that I think is very important to us, because the way we talk about equality in organized labor is not just about what other people have called identity politics. It's not only about race, though we're conscious. It's not only about gender, though we're conscious. It's not only about sexual orientation or ability or disability, though we are conscious. What it's really about is the equality of working people to have opportunity, to have what kind of equality? Economic equality. That is the biggest inequality in this country. So if you see health care and the provision of health care as a very, very basic element of economic equality, the ability to have it, to not worry about it, to be able to know that it's paid and that it covers sufficiently for the things that we need. Because now there are big costs. And even under Obamacare, the insurance companies, although they're required now to spend a significant amount of money on direct payment for services, which they call medical losses. Did you know they call the money that they pay for your care a medical loss? They do. And then the 20% that they're allowed to spend on marketing and dividends and profit and all that stuff, that's not called medical loss. Only you and I are called medical losses. But there would be big savings to us and, frankly, to our labor organizations from universal health care. Big savings to cities and counties, and as I said, to all the districts. If we take the profit out, it's much more affordable and efficient. So let me close also with a story, because every time I speak to a group, or even more important, every time I listen to a speaker, I wonder, but we're not in charge of everything. Is it really possible for us to do it? And I'll tell you, I think it is. And the reason is, it comes out of a story that became a movie that is one of my very favorites, and that's The Wizard of Oz. But I see The Wizard of Oz as a slightly different kind of story. First of all, it's a story about a very diverse group of entities. I mean, talk about diversity, okay? You got a scarecrow, you got a tin man, you got a lion, you got a little girl from Kansas, and you got a dog. I rest my case. So it's a very diverse set of entities. And what draws them together is their feeling that they're all deficient in some way. They're all missing something that they really need. They don't know if it was taken away from them or whether it's inherent, but they know what they need. But they don't think they can get it themselves. They come to believe that they have to go on a very dangerous journey in order to ask a very powerful other entity to please give them what they need. And so they set out on this journey, and we notice while we're watching, they already seem to be exhibiting the stuff that they think they're missing. Brains and heart and courage, just in order to get to Oz. And they get to Oz and they knock very loudly on the door, and they're admitted. I didn't see anybody else get in. They kind of talk their way in. And then they demand to see the wizard, and they're told, no, the wizard doesn't see anybody, but they managed to get an audience. Unfortunately, in the meantime, Dorothy and Toto are kidnapped by the Wicked Witch of the West. Women, we'll talk about this witch symbol some other time. Okay. So the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion line up in front of this powerful image of the Wizard of Oz. Lots of smoke and noise and lights and, growling voice. And he tells them, I will give you what you want, but you must bring me the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West. So they set out on yet another dangerous adventure, and they managed to get into the witch's castle, and they even rescue Dorothy and Toto, and they kill the witch, kind of accidentally, actually, because who knew she was going to melt if you threw water on her? I mean, the Scarecrow's on fire. Of course, it made sense to throw some water, and just there she goes. But the witch is gone. They've got the broomstick. They go back to the wizard, and again, they're just incredibly intimidated. You can hear the Tin Man's knees knocking together by this mesmerizing view of power. And everyone is completely paralyzed except for Toto, who's very curious, who goes over because he notices there's something over here hidden by a curtain. And he pulls back the curtain, revealing an old guy turning a lot of dials and making all the noise and the lights go flashing and whatever. I used to say, that's Sacramento. And of course, the first thing that the wizard says is, pay no attention to the old man behind the curtain. Well, that doesn't work. It's just too late. They've discovered there is no wizard. Now, that is not good news. If you've gone all this way to try to get a magical entity to give you what you need. And if the movie ended there, it would be a total bummer, but it doesn't. The wizard comes out with a bag. And he says, look, I'm going to tell you some secrets. Scarecrow, most people have no more brains than you have. What they have is a diploma. And he pulls a diploma out of his bag, and he hands it to the Scarecrow, who then goes E equals MC squared, which all you engineers know is just a sure sign of intelligence. And he says to the Tin Man, Tin Man, most people have no more heart than you do. What they have is a testimonial dinner where they're given a watch that says, great humanitarian. And he pulls kind of a heart-shaped clock out of his bag and gives it to the Tin Man, who puts it in his chest, where we also keep our tickers. And immediately the Tin Man starts crying oil tears, which we remember at that moment he's kind of been doing all along. And the wizard says to the Lion, Lion, most people have no more courage than you have. What they have is a medal that says valor. And he pulls such a medal out of his bag and pins it kind of Marine fashion on the poor Lion, who then becomes the security chief of Oz in the next book. So what's the moral? The moral is we've already got what we need. We've got it inside, we've got the talent, we've got the drive. We can do it, we have done it, and we will do it. Keep up the good work. Thank you.